Hello second grade. So today we are going to create these owls out of clay. They're 3D owls or sculpture owls because they have height, so they're tall, and they have width and they're wide, but they also have depth from the back to the front. So these are called sculptures, 3 dimensions, height, width, and depth. And here are some examples of what your clay owl could look like. We're going to start with a slab of clay to make these, and then we're going to create a cylinder and close that cylinder up, and then add a face and some texture to the outside of our owl. So this is an example of an owl in case you work a little bit slower and you run out of time. The last thing you're going to do are the wings. So if you run out of time, it's okay if you're missing wings. It still looks like an owl. It's got the beak and the eyes. The beak and the eyes are pretty important. So if you're a slow mover and you run out of time for the wings, that's okay. And remember, today is the day, the only day you get to work on this. So if you don't finish your owl today, you're out of luck. So here's another owl where they had enough time to add some feathers on the top and then just triangle wings on the side. And then this one, it's a little bit warbly. It's not straight across at the top. It's kind of angled, and that's okay. It gives it some character. And then some silly eyes with a bigger black dot and a smaller black dot, which creates a little bit of silliness and interest. And then this is a shorter one. So here's an example. Sometimes some people's owls might be taller and some people's owls might be shorter. It just depends on what kind of shape of clay you get from me and how do you turn it into an owl. Alright, so these are obviously finished pieces that have been fired, glazed, and fired again. So we work on a piece of cardboard, and we have a little cup of water for our slip, and then we have a toolbox full of clay tools. So when you I went ahead and gave myself a piece of clay that's kind of broken, just so I can show you, you can easily fix anything that you get from me that might not be as neat as possible. So I'm going to take my finger and just push and pull it across this crack to kind of make that crack go away. And I'm going to use the palm of my hand to kind of pat the slab down a little bit. It's thicker on one side and thinner on the other, and I want it even all the way around. I'm going to pick this up so it doesn't get stuck to the cardboard, flip it over, and pull my finger across the crack on the other side because it had really cracked all the way in half. Not my fist. I don't want my knuckles to be marked in the clay, just the palm of my hand, a nice smooth surface. So here's a piece of clay. Probably you're going to get a nice piece of clay from me that looks like this, but I just wanted to show you if you get one that you're not real happy with, you can really turn it into a nice piece just with a short amount of time and a little bit of effort. Alright, so the first thing I want to do is I want to cut a little bit of this slab off so that I save some clay and put it aside for the eyes and the beak and the wings or anything else that I might have time for later. So I'm going to use a plastic knife. You could use any kind of clay tool. The wooden ends work really well. You could even use a spoon, the handle of a spoon, to cut through your clay. And I'm going to cut just a little bit off, just a small strip. You don't want to cut too much off because then your owl will be really small. But if you have a small owl, that's okay too. I think maybe I'll cut off just a little bit more. Alright, and you also want to cut pretty straight. You want it to be even on both sides. So here's my slab. So now I'm going to roll it into a cylinder. So I'm going to pick it up, and this is the side I cut. It's nice and flat. So I'm actually going to set that on the table on my cardboard. I'm going to bring it around to create a cylinder. Now, before I close this seam up that I make for the cylinder, I want to score and slip the edges. So I'm going to scratch, which is scoring, crisscross lines, and I do it on both sides, both ends of the clay, and then just a little bit of water. This clay is pretty moist, pretty wet and soft. I don't need a lot of water. So I'm going to pull this up and around to create my cylinder. Notice that it stays open. You can see through it. That's very important. So I'm going to pull this around, and then I'm going to pinch this and just take my finger and just pull it across the seam. So remember, my slab had a cut or in the middle of it, and I just took my finger and pulled it across. But the difference is I'm keeping my left hand, the hand I'm not using, inside the cylinder so it doesn't collapse or doesn't close up. And I'm smoothing that seam out. So now when I flip my cylinder up, you can see all the way through to the cardboard. If I had let it collapse, then this would start to make like an oval and then even close on me. So when you're making your cylinder, you want it nice and round. Doesn't have to be perfect because we're going to squish it and make it more of an oval, but you want to make a cylinder where that you can see all the way through. Now one side should be nice and flat so that you can set it on your cardboard and it'll stand up. If it's not nice and flat, you can take a knife and cut it, but I really think that if you just gently tap it on the cardboard, it'll stand up nice and flat for you and you won't have a problem. So this owl's going to be pretty tall actually. So now I need to close up the top. So remember with our owl, it's open on the bottom and it's closed on the top. Score and slip the inside because I'm taking 2 pieces of clay and I'm putting them together. So I'm just going to scratch the inside, which is scoring. And then I'm going to slip the inside, just get a little bit of water on my fingers and run that water on the inside. And then I'm just going to pinch this closed. Just like that. Pinch it closed. So it's still open on the bottom, but I've pinched it closed to the top. Now I have this seam. I'm going to get rid of this seam, so I'm going to take my finger and just rub with a little bit of pressure, a little bit of pushing, rub the top of that to make that seam go away. So now I'm going to just pinch the top of this to make sure it's nice and smooth and a nice seam. And then I'm going to look at the body of my owl. I have a few little cracks, so I'm going to take a little bit of water, not a lot, just a tiny bit, and I'm going to rub those cracks out. If you put too much water on the outside of your bird, it's going to get really slimy very fast and it's going to be hard to work with. So I'm using my fingers inside the clay to hold it open, because if I take and just push down, I can make this close up. I don't want to do that. And this is going to be the front. This is the smoother side. Alright, and I'm making sure it still stays open so I can stand him up. Tap him down again if he starts to fall over. So this is my owl. I'm going to give him a little bit. He's already leaning to one side, so I think I'm going to just gently pull this side up and push this side down. So here's my owl now. So he's kind of leaning to one side. So now I need to make my eyes and my beak for sure, because I might be running out of time in class. So I'm going to take this clay, going to wad it up, and I'm going to pinch off 2 equal parts, 2 pieces that are about the same size. And then you're going to take that piece and roll it into a ball in the palm of your hands. And then roll the other piece, and this way you'll definitely know if they're the same size or not. Now, they don't have to be the same size. These are going to be my eyes. I could make one eye considerably smaller than the other eye. So maybe I pinch a little bit off of this, and I'm going to make this eye smaller. So you can see those are definitely 2 different sizes. So now I just take the ball that I rolled, I use the palm of my hand, and I just gently press down and make it a pancake. Not a thin pancake, a pretty thick pancake. And then I'm going to take the other one and squish it down with the palm of my hand. So now you can see my eyes are definitely 2 different sizes. Now I'm going to flip it over, and since I'm going to put this piece of clay onto my owl, I need to score and slip. So I'm going to do crisscross lines on the back of the eye. I'm going to flip my owl over to the front and do crisscross lines. I don't want them to be too big. I want the eye to cover that up, and it will, so that'll be alright. And then just a tiny bit of water, a little bit of slip on both pieces. And then I'm going to put my hand inside my owl so it doesn't collapse. Use the palm of my hand to press the eye onto my bird. So there are my 2 eyes for my owl. So now I can use a round dowel rod. Remember that the owls had these little black dots on the eyes? I can use a round dowel rod to do those dots. So it's just a wooden stick with a round end. And since this is a small eye, I'm going to use a small wooden stick, a small wooden dowel rod. And then it looks like my tool kit here does not have the big round dowel rod, unfortunately, for me to show you. But basically what it is, it's just a bigger, thicker stick with a round circle on the end, and you could do that in the big eye if you wanted. Or you could do it in both eyes. Maybe you want really big black dots. But I'm going to do 2 small circles. And you just push it gently in. You're not making a hole and pushing it through your owl. You're just gently making a mark. Now I have a lot of clay left over, and really the only thing I have to do right now is a beak. But I'm going to take this clay that I have here and I'm going to pat it into a pancake with the palm of my hand, and then I'm going to cut a triangle out. I'm going to cut one straight side And all the sides to a triangle are straight, but I'm going to cut 2 diagonal angled sides, just like this. So here's my triangle. Now, if I need to put this up to my bird, if I put that on my bird, that's a really big beak. That doesn't look very nice. So I'm going to cut this beak a little bit smaller. And the edges are pretty rough, so I'm going to take just a tiny bit of water, and I'm going to rub my finger on the edges of this triangle so I get a nice, neatly made triangle for my beak. And again, scoring and slipping, because now I'm going to take this piece and put it right on my bird. It's a nice big beak. I wouldn't want it much bigger than that, that's for sure. So he could technically almost be done. I need to add some texture to the body of my bird. This isn't good enough. So I could take that round dowel rod again that I used for the eyes, and I could do polka dots, which I did on this owl here. I just did those small round stick and did polka dots on this owl. On this one, the yellow one, I used the bigger round dowel rod to do big polka dots. And then on this red owl, I took a popsicle stick and I took the end of it and I just pressed it into the bird and made these neat rectangles or broken lines. And then on this blue bird, I took a popsicle stick, and instead of pushing it straight in, I pushed it in at an angle, and I got these little curved lines that almost look like feathers. So whatever you want, I think I'm going to take this dowel rod, and I'm going to do stripes on this owl. So I'm just going to take and press gently into the clay, and I want you to do it all the way around your bird, not just the front. We're not just decorating the front of our bird. Alright, so I have some nice stripes on my bird. He looks pretty plain up here, so I think I'm going to probably do these little cuts on the top of my bird like I have here. So I'm just going to clean this plastic knife off, and I'm just going to press into, oops, that's getting stuck there. So I'm going to get a little bit of water on my tool and just use this popsicle stick with a little bit of water, because it won't get stuck in there, to press down into the top of my bird. So he's looking pretty good. Now I just need some wings. So I have quite a bit of clay left over. I'm not going to be using all of this clay. So if you don't use all of your clay, I ask that you give it back to me so I can give it to the next class coming in. And then I'm going to cut 2 triangles out, just like I did for the beak. So this is just doing it all over again. Okay, now if I want my wings exactly the same size, I need to lay this down on top like it's a pattern and cut around it. But I'm going to make one wing smaller than the other because this is not as much space to work with as I have over here. So I'm going to make a smaller wing for this side. So this clay here is left over. It's not a lot, but this is something that could easily, a kindergartner could use to make a pinch pot out of. So please don't waste the clay. And just put it back in my plastic bag. So these are my 2 triangles. I need to smooth up the edges. Now again, if you don't have time and you run out of time, as long as you have a face on your owl and some texture, just like I have, you're officially finished. But wings are nice to have, because then when mom and dad look at what you bring home, they'll definitely know it's a bird because you have wings on the side. So I have a nice big wing here. You're going to put the top part, the pointy part of the triangle is the top of the wing. So I'm going to lift up my bird, look at the side of it. I'm going to do crisscross, scoring, slipping, a little bit of water, and then I'm going to take my wing and put it on the side of my bird, and I'm going to push this tippy top of the triangle into the side of my bird. And then I'm going to take the wing and I'm going to curve it out a little bit, just like I did with these wings here. So I'm going to make it curve out just a little bit, so when people look at my owl, they see the wings sticking out. So here is my finished owl. When you are finished, you're going to bring me your owl, and I will scrape your initials on the bottom rim of your owl and put it on the cart to dry, and then I'll fire it and get it back to you, and we'll glaze it and put the color on, and we'll fire it one more time. Hello, 2nd grade. So today you're going to get your clay owl, your slab clay owl back today, and it's going to be hard. because I fired it, and then it'll come back nice and bright and white like this one. So now you're ready to glaze it. You're ready to put the color on your owl. And you're going to have lots of little cups of different colors to choose from. There's going to be black and white, so you can do the eyes of your owl. And then I want you to pick one color for the body of your owl. We're not going to do rainbow birds, just one color. You're going to pick a color for the beak, and then your eyes, probably black and white. When you glaze, you're going to glaze everything that you see here. You're going to glaze everything on the back, but you will not glaze the part that has your initials and the part of your owl that sits on the table. Because if you glaze that bottom part, I can't refire your owl, and it'll stick to my kiln. So you're going to have just a normal watercolor paintbrush to glaze today. But if you need a smaller paintbrush, maybe for the holes of your eyes, I will have some of those out, and you can help yourself to those. So with the glaze, you just get some glaze on your paintbrush, and it's very much like paint. And since I'm starting with white here, you can't probably really see what I'm doing because it's white on white. But you, up close, will be able to see if you're covering the clay with the glaze or not. And the neat thing about glaze is when I refire it, it's going to turn into glass, and you're going to have this beautiful shiny bird when everything is finished. But it'll only be shiny and smooth if you put enough glaze on. So you kind of want to put a layer of glaze on and then go back and put another layer. And the glaze dries really, really fast, so you'll be able to do more than one layer. And you always want to keep your paintbrush dry. So when you rinse your paintbrush off in the water, you need to dry it off, and you're going to dry it off on the sponges, and we've done this before, so you know how to pull your paintbrush across the sponge. So now I want to do the black part, the black dot in the eye. So I'm going to get a smaller paintbrush, get a little bit of black on my small paintbrush, and try to neatly get the black glaze into the circle on the eye. So I'm going to have to be really careful because I don't want to get black on this part of the eye. So now I'm going to add just a little bit more white on my eyes, another layer, to cover up that black that I accidentally got on there. Okay. Alright, a nice even layer of white. And now I'm going to pick a color for the beak. I'm going to go for this orange color for the beak. You might want yellow, you might want brown for your beak. You get to decide. One of the colors that's on your table you get to choose from. And you're just painting your owl, but it's 3D, so you kind of have to do the sides too. You can't just paint the front, the top of the pieces. You've got to paint the sides too. Okay, so after you get the beak and the eyes painted on your bird, glazed on your bird, you're going to pick one color for the remainder of your bird. So I'm going to make a green bird, and I want you to put a nice thick coat of glaze on. So fill in all those little white spaces that pop up as you cover your bird. Try to stay as clean and neat as possible. So you've done your eyes, you've done your beak. So now I want you to do your best not to get this green or whatever color you want to do your bird. If you want to do an orange or a yellow bird or a blue bird, I want you to make sure you don't get that glaze on the eyes. So you're going to have to be extra careful right around the eyes. And you are finished when you have at least one coat on of one layer of glaze, nice even front, back, and sides. So I'm not going to do the inside here or the bottom. And again, if you have time for a second coat, go ahead and put one on. And I will refire your bird, and it'll come back to you all shiny because the glaze becomes glass layer on the outside of your bird, and you'll get to take your bird home. So good job, second grade.